Hello, BookTube. Sorry for the bad lighting. Sorry for the bad angle. And also sorry that this is obviously, I'm filming this immediately after having filmed the last video. I ordinarily don't do that, just because it's always struck me as a little weird to have a video that I have not uploaded. But I've trundled myself down into a sitting position on a pillow, and I'm right here and ready. I might as well film this bookshelf as well. I will hold it off, just not to bury you in bookshelf tours, but I thought while I'm down here I might as well. So we'll do, this is the final bookshelf of the thin east wall bookcase. We will have finished this bookcase. First we'll do the transverse books. The first one of those is the Claverings in a Dover edition. This is by Anthony Trollope. This is the reason I got it is because it has the illustrations, which a lot of the later reprints don't have. They don't bother to do it. And there's something to that. Although I have to admit that the last time I just reread the Claverings at the end of 2016, and I read it on my phone. And the version that I had on my phone was Project Gutenberg, and it had the same illustrations. So I read it, I highlighted, I took notes in the text that I can refer to, and that I emailed to myself. So I'm not really sure about the fate of a book like this. I'm really not. But anyway, the next one is this is a fairly recent translation of Death in Venice. This is I love this little edition. It's got the decal edges and all, and the translation is by Michael Henry Heim, with an introduction by Michael Cunningham. And when it comes to a classic like Man, I tend to just look around for an edition that I like, and I'm aided. I have the luxury of the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, where I see everything. So it's not like I'm in a little town 200 miles outside of Terre Haute, where I've got no bookstore, and when I drive 200 miles to get to the nearest Barnes and Noble, they only have one cheap trade paperback of Death in Venice, so I have to buy it. If I want to read it, I have to buy it. If the library doesn't have it or whatever, I have the luxury of having a very, very busy used bookstore right in Boston, so I can wait. If I know there's an edition out there that I want of something, I can wait until I get it. And then we'll move on to the books on the shelf themselves. We'll start with this. This is Robert Lacey, Aristocrats. It's just a big, well-illustrated, fairly slavish series of profiles that he wrote of modern-day British aristocrats and their famous forebears. It's a little toothaking at times, but I love it because A, I love his writing, and B, I love the subject. I not so much the present day aristocracy, although I've had some dealings with the present day British aristocracy, but also I like the stories in here don't tend to go all the way back to the Stuarts. The stress of the book's background tends to be going back just to the time period that I like, the Edwardian era and the beginning of the 20th century. So I keep it, and I often reread it for that. The next one's something I think we've seen on this channel before. If not, allow me to recommend it, although where you're going to find it, I have no idea. This is Victor Callahan's great book, Mammals of North America. Let me show you that is the cover of the edition that I have. I don't know that this ever had a paperback edition, but this is fantastic. It's got, first of all, great illustrations. There's see that right there? That is a jaguar. Let me get you another one. It has it goes through all of the major families of all North Americans and animals: the cats, the rodents, the dogs, the antlered animals, and it there you go. There's the coyote. It gives you very good, very accessible glimpses of their natural history, and also it's loaded with first-hand stories from hunters and trappers and fields people of all kinds. That are every bit as entertaining as the natural history itself. It's just a wonderful guide to the nature of North America. And then another nature book. This is Cache Lake County. Cache Lake Country. This is by John Rowlands, and it's just a crammed full of not just the personal anecdotes and the natural descriptions of what it's like to have a little lake cabin, but also all sorts of practical details like how to make a bird feeder, or how to lift a canoe for portage or whatever. And the book is extremely liberally illustrated by Henry Bugby Kane, who you've heard of on this book show before. That's Deer in the Forest. And there's just tons of... He did the spot illustrations, he did the chapter headers, and he did full-page illustrations all throughout here. There's a loon in a pond, a lake full of logs. I just love the book. When did this come out? This was 1947, and it's just one wonderful nature story after another. It has a special... these things, this and the Callahan have a special place in my rereading because I have spent an enormous amount of time trekking around out of doors. I don't do it anymore, but I did once upon a time do an enormous amount of it. So a lot of the stories that are in these books actually resonate. Then we have another theme that's been in this book tour, even in this one bookshelf, is old books on Boston. Books on old Boston. And this is one of them, James Russell Lowell and His Friends by Edward Everett Hale, who stomped around Boston quite a bit, just as much as James Russell Lowell did, and who also has a big statue in the public garden. And this is a great, affectionate book about the whole literary circle that surrounded James Russell Lowell, every single figure of whom is now forgotten, including Edward Everett Hale, even though he wrote A Man Without a Country. He wrote a story that was, for a time, fairly immortal. That whole intellectual me has vanished completely. And since James Russell Lowell and His Friends, no one has bothered to write a big, rambling, modern history of them all, of those men and women and the things they did and the ground they broke. And that's a shame, because that's a big part of America's literary patrimony that is just slowly being forgotten, or completely forgotten, but not written about. And that bugs me. Then we have something, I just noticed this now, this really shouldn't be here. There's a bookcase right behind me for this sort of thing. I don't know what it's doing down here. This is Historical Fictions by Hugh Kenner. The collection of his paid deadline work, his essay work for book reviews and whatnot. So it should be in the bookcase right over my shoulder, the one that's devoted to that. But it's Hugh Kenner... he's a lifelong academic, so he did these things as academics do to round out a mortgage payment or whatever. But his are exceptionally vicious and exceptionally comprehensive. When he was confronted with a new Joyce biography or something like that that he didn't like, and he didn't like almost everything, he would tear it to shreds, and not in a vituperative way, in a factual way. He would tear it to shreds until the point you'd get halfway through some of the pieces in this book, and you'd say, if I were the author, I would have killed myself. I don't think any author ever did, but it wasn't from want of Hugh Kenner trying, that's for sure. Then we have, this is a bit of an oddity, but I have it here because I actually do revisit it, not as often as I should. But I think that's true of every book on this shelf, and probably because of its location. I should probably get into the habit of rotating these things around. But this is volume 35, 1910 McClure's magazine. This is exactly the sort of thing that you would find at the Brattle. And that's all that it is just reprinting McClure's magazine from, with the double columns, from 1910. So the big articles on the working poor or the state of the monarchy in Portugal, vying with serialized potboiler fiction. And I just love this sort of thing. I remember vividly when I got this at the Brattle, and it was in a whole sale rack cart of its peers. I wished like the dickens that I had got 1901, 1902, 1903. I wish I got them all for $1 a piece. I wish I had. Considering how much I love this and how much fun it is to go through it, I wish I had more of them. But that's the neat thing about the Brattle. They and their peers, the 1910 Harpers, the 1910 Scribners, they will appear at the Brattle if you just wait long enough. And then we have a thin work of literary essays. So once again, something that shouldn't be in this bookcase. This is Poetry as a Means of Grace by C. Osgood. And it is Milton, Spencer, Dante. It's the meat and potatoes Western poets who I really love. And there are a couple of general interest essays in here on poetry and on being a poet that I actually tend to reread more often than the profiles of Dante and Spencer and whatnot. Because it's really, really good. I don't think a lot of the essentials have changed. And then a book that I've mentioned on this channel before, I'm pretty sure I've shown it on this channel before, I absolutely love it. It is The Friends of Richard Nixon by George V. Higgins. A departure from the author from the fiction that he used to pay his bread and butter into nonfiction about the Nixon administration. Excoriating. Just excoriating. Every paragraph strikes in 5 directions, and successfully. It's just... It is an absolute classic of American political writing, something that you shouldn't miss if you're interested in that sort of thing. And then we have something that's fairly new. I think this might be from last year. Let's see here. Yeah, from last year, or late last year. And it's just more of my love affair with the Vikings. This is Northmen. A relatively new history of the Viking saga I thought was really good, really entertaining, so I brought it in here and kept it. Although, once again, I'm thinking that maybe a soup to nuts reorganization of this room is probably in order, in which all the Viking books are together. And well, I'll have to see. That's one of the things I like about these bookshelf tours, is that they get you thinking about that sort of thing. And then we have a classic of a kind, of a syphilitic kind. This is Boswell's London Journal. This is James Boswell, the famous biographer of Dr. Samuel Johnson, who's known for that big work, and that's okay. That he's immortal for that big work, and that's just because it's a great book. The famous saying from a stuffy British historian was that when it comes to biographers, Boswell is first, and he has no second. That's not true, but the life of Johnson is great. It deserves its place as a weird and towering masterpiece of English letters. But that having been said, Boswell wrote feverishly for his whole life. He really did have a compulsion for writing that he really couldn't control. And his London Journal is amazingly entertaining. It is amazingly good, especially in this old edition by Frederick Pottle, who was instrumental in bringing it to the public. I found this at the Brattle. Oh God, I don't even know. I found this a long time ago at the Brattle, and it's really well curated, and I just love it. It is so disreputable. Boswell was such a jerk and a cad and a horrible monster, but he, like Samuel Pepys, he wrote about it all so endearingly that you forgive him instantly as you're reading it. And then the last book on this shelf is a big one. It's the Oxford University Press did a series of Oxford handbooks. A handbook sounds like something you could stuff in your pocket. These aren't that. The Oxford handbooks were big overviews of certain subjects, and they're still going on, and they're really, really good. They are a collection of the latest essays from the experts in the field of whatever subject they are. I've had them on, I don't know, probably a dozen different subjects, and I don't think I've kept a lot of them. And that's another regret. I wish that I had kept a lot of them, but I kept this one, that's for sure. This is the Oxford Handbook of Animal Ethics. And it's all about the growing subject of animal rights and animal cognition and animal morality, the morality of our laws towards animals, how we treat them and how we should. And with any anthology collection, right, there are going to be weaknesses and strengths, but the strengths in this are really strong. It's a tremendously good anthology on the subject. And there you have it. That is the 6th and final. Is that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, the 7th. That is the 7th and final bookshelf of the thin East Wall bookcase. We actually did it. We got all the way through the thin East Wall bookcase. The Everest before us, should you choose it, is the fat East Wall bookcase right next to this one. I don't know how long that would take. If this interests you, then we will commence. But at least we finished with this one. So pat yourself on the back, and I'll see you soon, book 2. Thank you.